Eating at home, the new normal now for most of us around the world. Kids don't go to school, hence there are no school meals. Adults can't eat out because restaurants and cafés are closed. That means back into the kitchen and do your own cooking. A trend that shows an interesting side effect. Organic and regional produce has become even more popular. Some just want to support local farmers and vendors. But the main reason for a rise in organic food seems to be that most of us believe healthy food will keep us healthy too. And during a pandemic, that's a pretty good incentive.
Hello and welcome to a new and hopefully tasty edition of our COVID-19 special. I'm Monica Jones and I have to say all of that looked yummy. I don't know where they did their grocery shopping, but if you're here in Berlin, you'll probably turn to organic food producers here in the region. Their business is thriving despite or because of the pandemic.
It's unusually quiet in the farm shop here in Brodowin, Brandenburg. Due to the pandemic, only 3 customers have been in this morning. The people from Berlin aren't coming. It's very sad that people are forced to stay home. The cafes closed, no weddings or events allowed. The International Green Week that happens in Berlin every January was online this year, so no catering contract. The store and catering service turnover is down by 75%. It is a bit depressing, also for colleagues who can't do their normal jobs. But Katja von Malzahn and her husband didn't have to put any of their employees on reduced hours. They even hired 20 new people, because their organic produce delivery service is booming. They have 180 cows and produce milk and cheese in the farm dairy. The eco-village Brodowin also runs a kitchen in the nearby town of Eberswalde, which produces items such as chicken stock, pickled beet and potato soup. The organic farm's turnover has risen 50% during the pandemic. To be honest, I'm overwhelmed. Things here have undergone dramatic changes, and dramatic changes are always a challenge. At the moment, he and his team are delivering organic produce to some 3,600 customers a week in Brandenburg, Berlin, and also to supermarket chains. That's a third more than before COVID-19. Germany has seen a 20% rise in sales of organic goods during the pandemic. Demand really spiked when people were a bit panicked back in March, April. But the other issue is trust. People need something they can trust in this difficult time. The organic market exudes trustworthiness, so it's become increasingly popular, and smaller local stores have also become more popular. Many consumers are keen to support local businesses. It's a positive development. It's hard work, it's very challenging, but it's great. It's great the customers are supporting us. Ludolf von Malzahn is already thinking ahead. He wants to build loyalty that will outlive the pandemic.
And for more, I'm joined now by Brodowin Dar. He's the co-founder and director of Leucine Rich Bio, a microbiome company in the Indian city of Bangalore. The company is working on preventive healthcare and precision medicine. It's so very good to have you with us, Dr. Dar. And I'm sure that you're familiar with the saying, you are what you eat. Does this mean that all diseases, perhaps even including COVID-19, begin in the gut?
Well, thank you, Monica, for having me on the show. It's a pleasure. Well, yes, our intestine or the gut, as we know it, you'll be amazed to know that around 70% of the immune system reside in the intestine, And a lot of the diseases, especially the chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease, even mental diseases like Parkinson's and stuff like that, have been shown to be linked to the gut. There is something called as gut-lung axis. There is something called as gut-brain axis. There is a gut-skin axis. So yeah, a lot of diseases actually have a link to the gut. And COVID-19, since we are in a pandemic, era, so COVID-19, what people have seen in COVID is that the SARS-CoV-2 virus that infects the lungs through a receptor called ACE2. Now, ACE2 is also present in the intestinal, intestine. So a lot of the cells in the intestine have that particular receptor, and hence the virus might also infect the intestinal tissue.
Right.
And not surprisingly, a lot of researchers have found viruses in the stool samples of people affected with this disease.
Exactly, and we also know, because not just the intestine, but basically throughout our body, we coexist with millions of microorganisms, partly also responsible for our digestion, of course. How can we support those to fight the enemy, a virus, for example, that enters our body?
The microorganisms, especially in the gut, since we are talking about the gut microbiome, microorganisms, they play a very crucial role in not only metabolism of a lot of food that we eat, but they also synthesize a lot of vitamins. In fact, serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter, is also synthesized in the intestine. So it's a very important symbiotic relationship that we have with our microorganisms. And the best thing about the microorganisms in the gut, at least, is that they are malleable. What do I mean by malleable? That means they can be modulated, and they can be modulated by food. And hence we come to the very important topic that you have put across, that is how food can affect our health. So when we take care of the gut, if we take care of the gut by taking care of the microorganisms, that means the good microorganisms should be encouraged to grow so that the bad microorganisms can't grow, then we will be healthy. That's the idea. And how do we promote good bacteria or good microorganisms? Well, there are many ways, especially in the food. Since the topic is on the food, we can take,
Give us an example. For example, I mean, we all have to eat, and that includes you. Give us the perfect meal, especially now in the times of the pandemic, that keeps us healthy and that supports our immune system. What's the perfect meal?
So perfect meal to my mind would have equal representation of fiber, because fibers are very good prebiotics. They help the probiotics grow, and of course a lot of vegetables. People have shown that taking vegetables really help our microorganisms. Cut down on red meat, because again, red meat leads to something called as TMAO, and that can cause a lot of issues. Have whole cereals, or have a lot of nuts, grains, and stuff like that. All of these in equal proportion can help our gut stay healthy.
Does it matter whether it's organically grown? Because people are really crazy about organic produce right now.
See, organic foods are basically food which are grown without adding any pesticides or stuff like that. So they are healthy in that way. But I mean, if you eat food or fruits, vegetables which are grown non-organically, but have good proportion of the legumes and the grains and the nuts and omega-3 fatty acids that we can have from let's say fish and stuff like that, it should help. So yeah, organic food is good, but even if you don't have organic food, it is not going to change a lot of things. So
all right, so it's the right balance and nurturing the good microorganisms in our body. Dr. Debojyoti Dar, co-founder and director of the microbiome company Leucine Rich Bio in Bangalore. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Monica, for having me.
Well, time now for your questions. Over to Derek Williams.
What's the latest on whether humans can pass the virus onto their pets? Though we still don't know the exact route it took through exactly which species, the coronavirus came from the animal world in the first place. So, of course, there's been a lot of worry since the beginning of the pandemic that infected people might also infect their pets. Proven examples of that occurring are quite rare, though it does happen. And the affected animals are also occasionally mildly symptomatic. One study indicated that cats and ferrets are more likely to get it than dogs. In evolutionary terms, ferrets are, of course, pretty closely related to mink, which seem to be more susceptible to the disease. In another horrendous chapter in this pandemic, the detection of COVID-19 at fur farms in Europe led to millions of mink being culled last year. The reason for the drastic move was the fear that populations of animals at the farms could serve as reservoirs for SARS-CoV-2, and also that packed cages of sick mink might accelerate the development of even more dangerous new variants of the disease. To prevent that scenario in the future, researchers in both Russia and the US have been working on vaccines that could be used in mink that aren't all that different to some of the vaccines being developed for us. If they're approved and licensed, we might even see the first mink being vaccinated in a month or two. And manufacturers say they could quickly adapt their products for other domesticated animals, including dogs and cats. So I'm guessing pets probably won't be far behind.
As we're all waiting to get vaccinated, why not go for a sugary substitute in the meantime? This syringe-shaped cake may not protect you from COVID-19, but it'll certainly sweeten your day. A bakery in Germany came up with the idea, and it's not their first pandemic-inspired product. Remember the hunt for toilet rolls last year? Don't think about it, just dig in.